Hello there and welcome to another edition of Ask David. Plenty of questions to get through, so without any more ado, let's get on and answer some. At the top of the list is a question that's come in from Leonard. He's asking about a bottle brush. He's saying that it's finished flowering now and should he cut all those flowers off? That's exactly what I would do. I'd take off all the old spent flowers before they get a chance to start to set seed. And if you've experienced bottle brush before, you'll know that the flowers tend to mummify on the stems as those seed pods form, and you end up getting these rather peculiar wizened remains all the way up the stem. So if you can steel yourself to removing those spent flowers now and then perhaps thinning out some of the rather angular growth that they make, then you'll get that bottle brush in really good shape, ready for next year. Next, Anne is troubled about her runner beans. She says she's planted them out. They've got to about 25 centimetres tall, doing really well. And then she comes out and finds that something's been munching on the leaves and completely denuded them. I think this is likely to be a snail. If not one, then perhaps a couple of snails having a midnight feast, Anne. So I would deal with your slugs and snails in the conventional way, whichever you feel is appropriate. And for me, that involves going out after dark and seeing where those slugs and snails are. Going out with a torch, finding them, and then disposing of them in an appropriate way. Often that involves me taking them in the car a long way away from my home so that they don't find their way back. But you can protect your runner beans as well by putting a ring of either copper tape around the base of the plants, or you could put coarse grit around the bottom of the plants to stop the slugs and snails crawling over and getting onto the plants. Or alternatively, you could use one of the sheep's wool based slug pellets. So this is a material that is compressed sheep's wool. It comes in a pelleted form. You apply it around the base of the plant, and then as it swells, the fibres in the sheep's wool swell up and the slugs and snails don't like moving across it. So that would be my solution, and I bet your bottom dollar that's what the problem is, Anne. I've got a question from Jo about her tulips. She said that the foliage has started to turn yellow and has died down, and she wants to know what to do, whether to leave them in the pot that they're growing in or whether to take them out. Well, Jo, now that they've died down, we're a good way on since they've flowered. I would take those tulip bulbs out of the pot, leave them in the sun to dry off a little bit more, scrape the excess soil away, chop off the dead portion of stem, store them in a net or a hessian sack in a cool, dark place until about August, the end of August, beginning of September, and then replant them. Michelle is concerned about her rubber plant. She sent me a picture of it and it's got brown tips to the leaves and she's worried that she's gradually killing the plant and she wants to know what she can do about it. I think the evidence is at the bottom of the picture here, Michelle. If you look at the size of the pot that your rubber plant is growing in, it's quite small for the size of the plant. So I would be a bit more generous with it. I would repot that plant into a slightly larger plant pot, perhaps about an inch or 2.5 centimetres bigger all the way round. Pot it up into some nice fresh houseplant compost and give it a good water. I think what's happening is that the plant is struggling to take up enough moisture from the compost and the leaves are drying out too quickly being indoors, and I think that's what's causing the browning. So repot it and I'm sure your rubber plant will live for many years to come. Meanwhile, the last question comes from Sharyn, and she says she's got field bindweed that's growing all over her garden and she feels like it's laughing at her because as soon as she tries to dig it out, it grows back somewhere else. So Sharyn, I think your perseverance is really admirable, and that's what I would do. I would keep digging it out or hoeing it off, chopping that weed off at the soil level, and gradually, if you do that regularly enough, you'll weaken the roots because they won't be getting any energy from the top growth, and gradually you will weaken those plants and you'll get rid of the bindweed. But really, it needs huge perseverance, and it needs you to be out there every couple of weeks chopping off that regrowth as soon as you see it. So thanks for watching this week. Hope you've enjoyed the answers to some of those questions and that they've helped as many of you as possible. In the meantime, happy gardening.